Anyway. All right. Good morning. This is the what ARPA committee. Sorry, we've had some the ARPA committee meeting for March the 28th, 2022. That's correct, March 28th, isn't it?
Yeah.
We welcome everybody. Our members of the committee are Squire Lambert Moore, Squire Marty Booth, and Judge Wells. And we have Susan Lawrenson and Ann Northcutt, and they're here as well. Susan, we'll let you begin, or Ann, you want to let Susan begin?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I believe the last meeting was in October, the last time the committee met.
Really? Wow.
Been a while.
I think that's right. We have an annual reporting deadline coming up, which is the end of April. And one of the items that has been changing along the way, and there've been a lot of items changing along the way in this ARPA rules and how it's going to be reported. And actually they continue to change. And thankfully they seem to be a direction of trying to make things simpler. But one of the primary things that we believe we need to make a decision on for our reporting this period is it's an allowance for revenue loss. So as you recall, Franklin County has been awarded close to 10 million, just under 10 million. I think it's 9.8, something like that. And it's going to come in two phases. We received the first phase of that money last May. We anticipate receiving the second phase of that money probably this May, as it stands right now, and that will total the full allocation for Franklin County, like just under 10 million. So one of the things that has developed and evolved along the way with all of the interactions between the counties and the cities and the states and the feds has been to come up with a higher threshold for a revenue loss calculator, which has implications on how you can use the money. Early on, it is a very involved formula. Very involved formula that was in effect. Well, there was a template, plug and play, okay. But it was an involved formula that was used at the interim level. So we made an interim report in August, and we did our revenue loss calculation at that time with that formula based on the rules that were in effect in August of 2021. Since then, they've changed the formula. But not only that, the really good news is they've changed the rules so you don't even have to use the formula. So our election or our reporting period that's coming up for the April will have a line where we can elect as a body to say, if we use revenue loss as a category of expenditure for the rescue plan money, for the ARPA money, if we use that category, because maybe we don't have other specific project categories to direct that money to, then we can use up to exactly $10 million. If we make the election for what's called the standard allowance, am I going in the right direction? If we make the election at this reporting period, which is a one-time option, and it just so happens that their threshold is right above what Franklin County's allocation is, which is beautiful. Yes. So if we make that election to use the standard allowance, then we don't have to do any of the formula calculation, and then any funds that we have that we don't allocate for other specific purposes, or that we do, we can use that standard allocation of revenue loss replacement category for our ARPA allocation. So
the question then, to me, the main question comes up. does that eliminate that 2026 or 2024, whatever it is, that date?
No, those
Just
dates
that-
remain the same.
So
That-
how does,
everything has
so
to
how
be-
does it, how do you do that if you put it back into?
Well, in the reporting, we will be reporting annually. We have to capture the information on our projects. We don't just get to say, okay, this is revenue loss, it's just general funds. It has to stay ARPA funds. And we report on the projects as if we had chosen different categories. So it still doesn't, we still have to have everything obligated by December 31st, 2024, and everything spent by December 31st, 2026.
Does it still have stipulations on what you can spend it on if you put it back into this?
Well, first of all, let me make a distinction here. The committee action that I would be recommending that we specifically act on today is just the allowance, to say that we are going to elect the standard allowance versus the revenue calculator. And that's just one check mark. It
And
doesn't
that's an easy one.
doesn't obligate money anyway, doesn't allocate money anyway, it doesn't promise money anyway, it doesn't, it's a reporting election that we no longer have to worry about that formula. If we are worried about that formula, and like I said, in August, when we did the interim report, I ran the formula. And at that time, based on the way the formula was designed, our revenue loss was $1.2 million. Our full allocation, as you know, is just under 10. So based on the reformulation and the recalculation under the new rules and a higher percentage that they're allowing in a different fiscal year or calendar year calculator, it's still under $2 million for our revenue loss calculation. So either way, our revenue loss replacement formula does not give us the flexibility for any more money than our full allocation. So we have, but there are obviously jurisdictions that have an allocation greater than $10 million. So it may benefit them to do a calculation to see that they might exceed that. So, but we are certainly not anywhere near that category. So if we make this election to go with that standard option, when it does come into play at any
You
point
still
in
have
time.
stipulations, and that's where I was going is, if we go back 6 months to a year prior to the ARPA money, we had $2 million in COVID money. And we elected to take that COVID money. It was easier to put it back into the general fund pool as well, which allowed you to use it basically how you wanted to. But this is different in the fact that we're putting it back into the pool, but you only have 2 million that you could do virtually anything with, because that's called revenue loss, right? Then there's an additional 8 million that you're gonna have stipulations on. Is that what you're saying,
Well,
Susan?
no, what
nutshell.
I'm saying is that we make the election. We just make that election to
Yeah.
use the standard allowance.
Yeah.
That's
Step one.
step one. Step two, going forward then, and I printed a few of these allocations out. I was going to put it up on the screen, but I think that's too complicated. Right? Is the actual allocations for the use of the money would be a separate conversation. But going in that direction, Judge, since you brought it up, I want to take every opportunity to say, even though it's general government services that it could be used for, it's still tied to very specific reporting requirements and must be tracked under total federal rules. It cannot go back. It has to be tracked separately from the general fund. I'm looking specifically at our NACO, our association guidance that just came out March 22nd. That's how late all of this information is coming out. Our reporting deadline is April 30th, March 22nd, getting guidance on how to report. And this is just on the interim final rule. We expect additional guidance on the reporting requirements in the next, obviously in the next 30 days. Because there's, the reporting has to be done electronically. We don't even have a template yet, or a sample to use to get into the portal to see what the question, see the whole outline. There has been some guidance and training on it, but there are so many different categories because there's population categories, so you have to be careful of that. And there's how much money did you get, the category there. So you have to be careful that you fit yourself into the right category when you're looking at the rules and how they apply. So that's all being developed. But I was going to reference from our NACO guidance on the overview from just from this past week.
Yeah.
And very specifically in the key takeaways, it says that the revenue loss must comply with the with federal guidelines, and it must be tracked separately and outside of the general fund. So it will remain in the ARPA fund. It will be an ARPA fund. So going forward, it wouldn't be money transferred back to the general fund. It would be more like general government services will have to track through the ARPA fund. So there will be a very clear distinction, the way we understand it right now for using the money, as opposed to the way we use the money.
Even the monies used for revenue loss, you
Yes.
still can't use them. It doesn't give you a broader. picture to
Managed
use.
separately from the county general fund.
Okay.
It's laid out, from, this is just a distillation of the whole Treasury's rules, the Fed's, whole rule book. And even though it's simplified, it's still going to be more involved than the COVID money was. Very much so.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, because COVID money seemed to,
That was much easier.
it started out the same way, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden it became
Mhm.
a lot easier to do it.
Well, they're doing us a big favor with this $10 million threshold.
Mhm.
But for what we see right now, as of today, what I see right now is the money has to be managed separately from the general fund, and it will still be subject to very detailed reporting, but not maybe as detailed as some of the other categories. So what I passed out is a general outline of the projects that fiscal court has discussed and has already taken some action towards with resolutions or announcements to leverage other money and by using ARPA funds. So by using or having a resolution in support of the Frankfurt Plant Board's project for broadband and using them, we are able to take $3 million and turn it into a $16 million project by making that allocation of ARPA monies. That allocation may be reported in this annual report coming up, but it is still subject to further manipulation and control. You're not losing control of the ARPA money in that reporting document. You can still because we haven't spent anything. So it's a project and expenditure report is what I'll be working on in the next month. And the judge signs off on. The judge signed off on the interim report, which was very sketchy. It just said we received, so far 4.9, and then we're using, this is what we calculated for revenue loss and, signed and delivered. That was pretty much it. This time around, where we have a outline of projects, the broadband, the 600,000 that we've carved out for our 6 water districts for water projects, and then as well as and I didn't print my own copy here.
1.5 for sewers.
1.5 for sewers, and all of these projects are leveraging money from other, from other jurisdictions. So they are in specific project categories and have to have reporting because the water districts are subrecipients by virtue of them being government agencies or quasi-government agencies. We have to report quite a bit of information with that relationship. And in fact, we have a memorandum of understanding with each of those as they bring money into it. But we want to be very careful that we show and that we document along the way what our plan, I'll say at this point in time, what our current point in time plans are for those project funds in order to preserve, I think, basically the whole effort at the local level to use the money in accordance with the federal priorities.
That, if you would, Ann or Susan, let's go over what has been spent and what's been allocated in this first batch. And that'll give us an idea of what will be coming, what we have left.
Yeah, there you go.
I was gonna do all this in a paper saving way, but can't avoid it, can we?
We got it,
Can't
yeah.
avoid it, can we?
We're okay.
Lambert's got it memorized, so. Well,
We received
first
4
of all,
million.
we
Go ahead.
received 4.9 million in our first allocation. And we have spent actually written checks for all of the county government workers for premium pay. And that amounted to about $508,000. Excuse me, we did that in July, I believe, of this year. And that money actually was, I guess, reported in our interim report and will be reported as a project expenditure in our upcoming report. Now, we also have, and these items have been discussed in this committee, but have had action since we've had the discussion with committee, an allocation of $600,000 through a resolution we did in this past December, up to $100,000 each for each of our water districts. This fiscal court, we will have the first expenditure for one of the water districts for that specific program under the for their water.
Which one is that?
New meters through US 60
US
water
60?
district.
Okay.
They have an approved plan. The methodology we used was to make it simpler for us to already have these plans vetted and in compliance at state level through the Kentucky infrastructure.
Right.
Is it the full 100,000?
Yes, their costs will exceed that. So they will use that draw from this program to help supplement that full cost for their meter upgrades in that district.
Okay, what's the status then of the Peaksville Water District? I know they've applied, the Elkhorn Water District, they've applied, the Farmdale Water District, they've applied. So what are their?
I talked to North Shelby this morning and they're still looking at trying to get water under the railroad to a couple people in my district.
North Shelby and the plant board are the two that have not submitted their request for a specific project, even though they have, we have done the original vetting through the projects that they named to make sure that those were submitted into the portal, into the KIA portal, and are eligible for the Cleaner Water Program, because that's how those projects were deemed eligible. If they're eligible for the state revolving loan program, then they would be eligible for cleaner water. So that's the criteria that we used. So we're still waiting for those two to submit their formal request to the court
Okay.
to approve their funding their projects. The other four are underway, and actually we got information that Owen County is also contributing to Peaks Mills as they had planned. So those projects, we will start this one and the other three, will start to see some invoices come in soon.
they won't come in as a one whole big,
Well,
Raw.
US 60s did.
yeah,
The other ones,
will come in
will
separate
probably come in
pieces.
pieces.
Yeah,
And
okay.
yeah, we asked them to supply the invoices to us and they will provide us with canceled checks. So we have full documentation.
So they gotta pay up front. We just reimburse.
Well, if the water district needed it up front for the equipment, I think that we have decided that would probably be,
They have to provide documentation that they've obligated
Yes.
money through either a contract or procured it through the right channels, because all of these agencies have to follow procurement guidelines for bidding.
Do they have to do
And
Davis Bacon and?
they don't have to do Davis-Bacon if they're only using their own money and ARPA funds. If they're using any other monies, which I believe, one of the projects, and I'm drawing a blank on which one it is, has a large loan with Kia to also help do that, then they have to abide by those because that'll be part of Kia's requirements. But if it's just their own funds and ARPA funds, then they don't have to use prevailing wage.
Well, okay, so we've got really 400,000 out there committed, but 200,000 is, I'm sorry, yeah, I guess 200,000 from two districts is still in limbo, right?
I think
There's a
the
possibility
court approved the full 600,000, so that's the way Susan
I
has
mean,
shown
just
it, yeah,
for this committee's
exactly,
update
yes.
on that, okay.
so, and that's a good point, that should one of the districts not use the full amount, then that money would be, for lack of a better word, be obligated, but I just don't want, we have to show, these as some sort of obligation, okay, even though there's no contract, that we, in order to leverage other money, and by resolution, you are making a commitment of monies. Now, if the way things are going, new monies appear, or they change the rules, or the feds, whatever they do, the way they manage this, then we will make adjustments along the way. But we just have to stay nimble in our management and aware, but there are still obligations, through the committee in its efforts, again, to maximize the local impact by using all of the jurisdictions that are available towards a project priority, such as water and sewers and broadband. So that's been the fundamental effort, I think, from the get-go.
Yeah,
was-
and I want to come back to that in a minute, but I want you to give the full update because I'll let this board know something in a second. If you want to move on to
Yes.
that.
Well,
We'll come back to the water districts and
sure.
this.
Well, the
additional money
next allocation that we've made locally, the 1.5 million for a pump station and holding tank towards the Farmdale sanitation project. You can help me with
Yes,
the,
this is what would be the match for the federal appropriation, should we receive that?
Well, let's
it would
just
be a
go
match of-
on and say, here's where it is. And in my talk with Congressman Barr's office, the monies through the budget have been approved.
that's 1.5 million, right?
No,
No,
3.5.
3.5.
The 1.5 is a match for the 3.5.
Yeah, right, there you go. That's
And
our
so the 3.5 has been approved and they do not know specifically how the process is to procure it or to spend it, how it comes to us. And that's the federal government craziness. So it is in there. It's just a matter of time before we know. Okay, here it comes 3.5 million for the Farmdale Water District, and here's another 1.5 as part to match it. So here's $5 million. Now this is how you have to spend it. So They don't know that yet, so there's not gonna be a major announcement, so we're not broadcasting it and standing up and acting like we're gonna receive a big cardboard check or anything like that yet, because they're not ready to say, okay, this is how you're gonna spend it. That's the word. on the street.
That's great news. And the way it goes, one of the last appropriations that Congress gave was in 2009 for the Farmdale Sanitation District. This is some of the first appropriations they've started up again that's going to be.
And I think you told me, but this may be the only one that got approved in the budget.
I'm not sure as far as how many Congressman Barr submitted.
Mhm.
I know that it was on the very short list, so, I'm so happy about that. The way that it happened last time is now that if there's some kind of an agreement made, then they will look for a federal agency, more than likely the EPA, the way it was the last time, and then they will send us a very large grant application that we will have to go through what would be a grant process, the same thing, before we would have access for reimbursement for those funds. So it'll be a while until they figure it out and let us know what we need to do to be ready. Now, that project more than likely will be Davis-Bacon because it will be those federal funds. But the good thing about these ARPA funds is that they are allowing ARPA funds to be used as local match for our federal projects. So
Wow.
that's very unusual. Usually you can't do that. So
Oh,
that's more good
great.
news for us.
Yeah, that is, and that's a strong point to make, because throughout all of Treasury's guidance, they say you can't use match, can't use match, can't use match. So again, by having Ann thankfully being so in tune with all of the little grindy details on the specific grants, we're clear about that. So that we do have that option in this particular case. So till you get into it, sometimes, you just got to dig.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lot of work.
So
So did
Thank
wanna
you.
Go over. any
thank
more
you.
of that?
So the earmarks are basically the 1.5 of the ARPA local is going to leverage 3.5 of federal money through an appropriation that was earmarked for Franklin County and this specific project. So that's going in the right direction. And then the only other item that I have penciled in for our ARPA allocations are the broadband allocation. And the resolution in October that we made in support of the plant board for them to make an application in order to leverage. They were going to put in 5, the county puts in 3, that's 8 to match the 8 from the state. 8 from the state for a $16 million project for Franklin County itself.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's probably gonna go too. Well, eventually, nothing happens quickly, but eventually.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, there's about 350 million in it, and that's
There's
be in there
more
for
that's
that.
going to be in there, and I know, there's folks hoping that we could find more money from infrastructure, for the infrastructure bill and some things like that might lower the cost more. Depending on how it's handled, if it flows through the state the way that the first monies did, and is allocated into the broadband projects, more than likely they will try to fund more of the projects that applied before letting people ask for more. If there's some separate federal programs, when our conversation with the plant board, they agreed that any other funds that became available, that they would go after those as well to help enhance the project, or in these days of materials cost, help make up a difference if there is from what was originally anticipated, but that they would be willing to go after any funds that became available in addition to what we've already talked about. But yes, I expect that those additional funds for broadband from the state and from the federal government flowing through the state, they'll try to get more projects done before they allow people to ask for more toward the projects that have already been funded.
Good, that's great.
How many projects do you have any idea?
The plant board broke our projects down into 11 projects in Franklin County
Right.
Based on areas.
based on areas. Yes.
Mm.
Well, that's So we have a total of 5,600,000, is that appropriated?
Well, that's correct.
So,
Yes,
so
sir.
that will carry, since it's not all been spent, the monies that are coming in, the other half of the monies that are coming in May will cover all of that. When or if they're all spent, right?
Correct.
So the thing that we should want, the first question is, and I'll make a motion to go with what you're asking, and that we just check that this goes back into the
Revenue loss.
revenue loss, thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
the what I'm looking for recommendation on and action is the specific language. Tamara, are you doing your notes on this? Okay, as for the committee, elect the standard allowance of up to $10 million to spend on government services throughout the performance period. Now, and again, the reason why we are having this action is because this option is a one-time decision during the this reporting period. By making this election, it doesn't change how much money we get. It doesn't change how we spend the money. It doesn't obligate us to do anything other than gives us freedom.
Yeah, I like
This is an election for freedom.
Yeah, I'll second that.
And simplification, going forward. So that will just free us probably from some other levels of detail when we go to actually exercise a portion of this in that direction for reporting again.
Yeah.
So once we have the standard allowance methodology, then we don't have all of those measures that they had in the formula that were which were much more cumbersome. So this is an administrative freedom is what this is about.
Okay,
And hopefully.
well,
So,
we're gonna
Wait.
need that once you're gone.
well.
We need freedom, right?
We need freedom, but I just want to remind the magistrates, fiscal court members over and over again that this is all being managed directly at the federal level. This is more like, what was that old thing we had back in the Nixon times with revenue sharing?
Revenue
Remember
sharing.
revenue sharing, Squire Booth? Remember revenue sharing?
A little
Money
bit.
came directly from DC to Franklin County. It didn't go to Department for Local Government
Oh,
or the state treasurers and they take off, some money. It came straight from Washington DC to the cities and the counties. This is what's happening here. And it's good and it's bad. It's good because it's almost $10 million, but it is administratively, it is very different than what the CARES money was and many other of our state program managed monies, because we're dealing directly with Treasury and the federal Treasury portal. So our assistance, our guidance, to the extent is available is really our National Association of Counties. And thankfully we have a local member who has just served as outgoing president, isn't that right? Who was
Gary Moore.
yeah, and is working very closely with our state association. So staying in tune with all of that is a big job. And as I just said, March 22nd, that was last week, had some of this information and we're going to have to be, drilling through this. And Ann thankfully is collecting a lot of the detailed project material. And because we've already formalized a lot of our relationships with the subrecipient agencies, we're in good shape for just channeling the information we've already collected
that's great.
and are showing our plan,
Yeah.
our budget plan, if you will, to make this project expenditure report. And again, even though it's called an expenditure report, they clearly recognize the only money we've expended is the money for premium pay. Everything else is just a budget allocation, but what's going to happen after this reporting period. Then they're going to measure how much money have you used. And then this happened with CARES, for those that didn't use it, you know what they want to do? They want to come and take it away from you. So by having these reporting periods, they're going to be measuring, are you making good use of the money and how are you using it? And is it going towards these priorities? And where, they're going to be doing
Will
those
they
kinds of
accept the
measurements.
budget as a proof of what we're doing with the money?
Well, the project expenditure report will give the feds feedback of what kind of categories and what kind of expenditures are being made and what kind of direction the locals are going with
So
their
the
efforts.
Budget would count in that.
And again, it's a plan. It's going to be a reporting plan.
Okay.
All right, so while we've got everybody here, we've got a motion and a second.
I'd like to clarify the motion, if
Okay,
that's
you will.
okay to make sure.
I'll
I'm
make
saying
the
it right.
motion.
Okay, we've already,
He
we've
made
got
the
it.
motion, I second.
Um,
Judge,
Oh,
For authorization to recommend the ARPA committee to elect the standard allowance of up to $10 million of the allocated funds to spend on government services.
Okay, we would say standard allowance revenue loss calculation, should we?
Yeah,
That should,
that would be, yeah.
right,
Mhm.
revenue.
standard allowance revenue loss calculation up to 10 million.
Okay.
So read it again, make sure we're clear on the motion.
Okay, for authorization to recommend the ARPA committee to elect the standard allowance revenue loss calculation up to $10 million of the allocated funds to spend on government services
you left ARPA out.
Pardon me?
of the ARPA committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, that passes. Now, the question, since we have the ARPA committee here, is the new set of monies that are coming in. So, I'm just gonna throw this out for discussion. Let's talk about it. I'm gonna recommend, it's my recommendation, you all take whatever you want with it, that we redouble the 600,000 towards the water districts. If two of them don't use it, then that's fine. But in other words, we give the water districts another $100,000 as part of that 600,000. So we know Farmdale needs it desperately. I'd like to get that monthly bill off of there. We know that Peaks Mill needs it desperately. We know that Elkhorn Water District needs it as too. So it would be my recommendation that we take of the roughly 5 million that's coming in May, that we take 600,000 of that and set it aside for the water district, a second round for the water district. And do you have anything to say about that?
One thing that I'm going to be interested to see is the state used their ARPA funds toward the cleaner water program and allocated certain amounts for each county. Well, it was county, city, it was our community. That's where the almost $2 million came from, that we allowed to be put toward the Twilight Trail station so that Farmdale will have a connection there. The legislature's allocating more money into the cleaner water program. There may be additional
More money,
monies
correct.
available either with the same formula, or they may decide to structure it differently where more individual projects that are in that portal could be funded instead of through a community, that KIA could fund some of these projects that Peaks Mill and Farmdale have submitted in the portal. So that we may want to wait just a little while I think that's a great idea. And probably going ahead and saying this is a plan, I think that we could still be flexible
Yeah,
enough
well,
to see what's
yeah,
going to happen
okay,
with
to
those
see where
additional
those
funds.
other monies come. I hear what you're saying exactly, is that there could be some more monies, and it could be that we give 600, we just approve 600,000 to be there if they have a project. It could be that we have another 2 million and it may make the pool bigger.
exactly.
For the-
And we may be able to leverage.
Yeah.
To help leverage some more
And the
state
state
funds.
recommends them going to the state before they use this money too.
Are they,
Mhm.
they recommended that? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, they said that before you use this money, look into see what state funds are out there first.
Okay.
So,
So-
and combine them both.
Yeah. Do,
They're both ARPA funds you're talking about.
Well,
one, yeah. the
probably, but
State funds and local funds, so you would have a problem of just saying that,
No, toward more water, and I don't know if you wanted to include sewer district in there at
Oh,
all,
yes.
but if you wanted to say a certain amount toward those types of projects, I think that still gives us plenty of flexibility to see what the state is, how
and
they're
that's
going to
a,
structure
and
theirs.
so that's a good question to ask this board, I think, because I was gonna come back on my second
Oh.
request that we appropriate $1 million for the Farmdale Sanitation District to use for matching funds as they continue towards their projects, what I was gonna recommend.
where is that? I mean, it
Farmdale
looks like
Sewer.
it's, no, I mean, looks like it's moving really slow out there. They need to get a move on the sewer.
Well, I just told you that there's 3.5 million, there's
I
$5
know the
million.
money's there, but I don't see much action being taken out there other than repairs. They need to get moving towards fixing the situation, getting the pump station in and all that.
Oh, you think
I
that should
mean,
come first?
No,
Well,
no,
no,
not
I know what you're
necessarily.
saying, but
You gotta
But
maintain your system that you're using, but, it's just gonna, it's a long way down the road to be finished, and then, I don't see it even starting yet.
They're
I'll let
currently,
Alex.
they're currently using
I
the
know
rest
it's a
of
lot of
that,
red tape.
the rest of that original appropriation. They're currently using the rest of that on design. And they're supposed to have that finished, I believe, by November. They're working on getting easements and those kinds of things. So there's some kind of behind the scenes things going.
Oh, sure.
The main thing that's holding them up on actual construction of the big projects, this 5 million with the federal appropriation and a match is going to accomplish the pump station at the Daly property and the holding tank and the line from there to Twilight Trail. Then they have to find another probably 12 to 14 million to do the collection systems to a main line to run it to the Daly property.
Yeah, the
So
pumps.
it's a money and situation. They do have, Bluegrass Ave is working on a CDBG for them for that project. It's only $1 million. That's the cap on a CDBG. So they're still a long way from finding enough funds, and, we're hoping maybe we can open some more doors and help them find some more.
well, there's,
funding.
the thing is, there's monies
Right,
gonna be out there.
that's
And the only
what
thing I'm
we're
saying
hoping.
is that if we
Need to put
if
some
we
money in
approve
there.
$1 million, $1 million could possibly get us another $4 million or
It
five.
very
you
well
know.
could.
What, and Lambert, this is my 7th year, going on my 8th year,
Yeah.
and we started this, and it's so slow.
No.
And I'm like you, I don't, but there's no way you can speed it up. There's no way you can speed it up unless we're willing to put in $15 million and pay for it all at one time and say,
Right.
get it going. And we're not, and we can't. And so that's not, we can't do that. But I think, and I'm just knock on wood, that once we get this federal money and this this $5 million monies, it's gonna completely change the project. It will, the project at that point, once we get the line connected from the Dailies and the pump station there at the Dailies, move to Twilight Trail, then we've got the line in place. Now we got to get everything to it. So that would be the second phase of it, and that will move quicker because that changes the focus from what you really have to now, let's the nitty gritty of getting it going.
Well, a lot of that original appropriation too, that they were able to use for the collection system improvement projects that they've done will ultimately help with the big project, because all those lines that have been repaired and are still going to be in place, it's just the stations that are going away. So they're improving the collection systems that will feed into that line that goes to
Yeah.
Twilight Trail. So we
Yeah.
have been making progress. It's just not as fast as everybody would really love it to be, but it's definitely a lot further than we were 15 years ago when I started working with Farmdale, so.
And you know, the saddest thing is, Lambert and Marty, first of all, let me from my seat to you, and it's your district and it's your insight. A big thanks to you for seeing the need of these out there. Their problem is the sanitation district board, and how much do you spend on keeping the plant going? And then how much do you, that takes away from what you got to get to eliminate the
Yeah, you
plant.
gotta keep it.
So it's a really complex issue, but you all have been wonderful. And I'm so appreciative of you seeing the need of these people, because they're begging. When I hear that, what they're saying, they're begging for help.
Of course, when we started out, the Farmville Sanitation District didn't have all these plants to maintain. That didn't come along till 2016, 17,
Mhm.
when they had to take all those plants on. So that added a whole lot more responsibility and cost to the sanitation district, while trying to keep the cost for
Keep
the
the-
customers
yeah,
low. So it's
customer
been a
costs
real,
down. That-
it's
yeah.
been, I just have nothing but admiration for those folks that are willing to sit on these boards.
Yeah, and Lambert,
Sure, listen to him.
Marty comes on and I'm on, and I hear, these are such good people. We have everybody that's is good on boards, but the Farmdale Sanitation District, those guys work so hard, and they don't have any money. And they have clearly stated that their goal is not to raise the rates,
Mhm.
because there's another piece of it, is that the people that are on the system can't afford a new system, and they're barely holding on to what is there. So
Yeah.
they're really incumbent upon us to help, and you all been right there with them. And so you're gonna go off, and hopefully you're gonna stay on, but you can hold your head high, because
Well, if people buy
Government
a
is
house
there to
out
help
there, they're
people.
not thinking about where the sewage goes. They're thinking about the rest of the house.
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
now they're stuck with this.
Yeah, so I'm asking, and Ann, if you, this is just, I'm throwing it out here, another $1 million for, to set aside for grants, possible grants down the road, for the sanitation district,
Okay, for hopefully to leverage
to leverage.
additional monies.
Yes.
Are you all okay with that?
Yeah, I second it.
Yes.
You want to.
I vote yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so Tim, I'll let you write that down. So in the new monies that are out there, that's 1.6 million out of 5.
1.6.
Yeah, we said 600 for
Oh, yeah.
the water districts,
And $1
and
million
$1 million for the
sewer.
sanitation,
Yeah.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So you want this to encompass both? The,
Did we not vote on the water district? I thought we didn't.
No.
Okay.
yeah, we did not.
Is that okay with you guys to appropriate of the new monies, 1.6 million?
Yes.
600,000 for the water districts and 1 million for the sewer,
Yeah.
and the Farmdale Sewer District in particular, right?
Yeah, the farm does sewer district.
Okay, so, and everyone's in favor of that.
Yes, everybody
Yes.
okay with that? Lambert, you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
When would you like for these recommendations to go to fiscal court, and also the,
Well, that's what I was getting, that's exactly what I'm getting ready to come back to you and ask. There's Susan's motion, Susan's recommendation, and in the passing, that needs to go to the fiscal court as well? Tamara, that's my question to you.
Well, I'm gonna ask
I don't-
Susan, does
I
it
don't-
require fiscal
It's a
court?
reporting. I don't know that it's required. I can't answer that if it's required or not. If the committee does, I mean, this is just a reporting option. I can't imagine it could have any kind of, well, I'm
I
not
say
sure.
no, it didn't need to go to fiscal court.
What were you
I don't-
asking? What was the
And
question?
do you know
The
if
resolution
committees have to go?
I agree with you.
report
I believe this
To
is,
check
this
the
is
box for
administrative.
standard revenue
Oh.
law.
But if it does, I mean, it's
I would think it would need to, but
pretty, I mean, it's check mark. So,
yes,
I mean, we have time. We have court
22nd.
Wednesday, right?
Wednesday.
So,
You want to put it on? Lambert, what do you think?
I think it should probably.
I think it'd be
And
better.
just make sure she's got it worded right, because when you read it, when you stated it, you said ARPA committee and ARPA funds, you only said ARPA committee.
Okay.
okay, well,
For
I'll-
authorization to recommend the ARPA committee to elect the standard allowance.
For ARPA funds,
Revenue loss.
right?
Revenue loss is in there somewhere.
But it was the next word.
Okay.
The standard allowance of revenue loss calculation of up to $10 million of the I have of the allocated funds, but I could say of the allocated ARPA funds.
that's what this is about.
Right, I mean, I'm asking, does
Yes,
that suit you?
yes.
Is that okay? Okay.
I know she
Okay.
said ARPA funds and you said allocated funds.
Okay, of the allocated ARPA funds to spend on government services.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so Susan, do you want to do an abstract? Just to have something for them to vote on,
Sure.
and we can just put that motion.
We need that ASAP.
Okay.
So that'll go on the 3:30 agenda. The,
Oh, yeah, it's 3:30.
Wednesday.
it's at 3:00 for the 3:30.
We're on at 3,
Yeah.
4, and 5.
Well, it'll just start at 3 and roll over,
Start at
right?
3 and roll.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll get out earlier.
So the new monies, judge recommended up to $200,000. Total for the water districts, it's $100,000 in additional, in addition to the
I
first
think we need to say
100,000.
this, that the additional appropriation, how would we say this, and the additional monies that are coming in May, that up to $600,000 for the 6 water districts would be allocated for their use in the same fashion that an application,
Right, that would be fine.
the same application format that they are presently using.
Now,
Yeah.
I want to say this, or just to maybe try to help clarify. I believe the reporting that we'll be doing for April 30th is just on the first tranche. Is that correct?
It's March 21 through March 22.
Right.
Yeah, it's just on the
So
first. So
It's just on
yeah.
the first 4.9 million. So the project expenditure reporting will only be on the first 4.9. So to the extent that I'm reporting, I'll only be reporting basically the original items that we've already had some resolutions
Yeah.
towards. With the exception of this one-time election for not having to do the formula.
Okay, so that should be on the fiscal court and the rest of it will wait until we get into the new trench, we call it.
Okay,
A wordle, is that 5 letters?
And what I passed out to
No, that's
everybody,
6.
just to give you an
I
idea,
don't know.
is a description of under government services. What are types of eligible expenses and what's not eligible. So that's on that first sheet.
Yeah,
For example, rainy day reserve accounts, debt service payment, anything like that is not an eligible use. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that part. The construction construction projects such as road building and maintenance and general government administration, things like that are eligible uses. And just because I knew that the question might come up, since we have a number of large projects that are being considered, as I sent a question and asked about if a project was going to, for example, have to be bonded, could ARPA funds be used toward that? And
I say no.
they said no.
Yeah.
They said, if you could break a part of the project out and pay for it as a separate project, that might be an allowed
Yeah,
use,
that's all
but
we
it
had
cannot go into a debt service with a project. So I wanted to be sure that that was really clear, just in case, that idea started to be considered.
Well, that leads to the next item that I thought we ought to talk about. And that I think is definitely by the court standards, the majority of the court, they're gonna push for some of these monies to be used towards the park. And so the question is, anything that's in this park master plan, anything that's in there, does that mean, like, and I'm gonna pull specific things out, just don't shoot me, just, these are just ideas. The park master plan has an amphitheater in it. And could any of these monies, 1.5 million from $3.5 million that's left over out of the appropriations, could any of these monies be used to pay for any of those other pieces in the park plan that would be appropriate?
Well, for example, and unfortunately, we didn't get the economic development grant that we applied with this jointly with the city to improve ball fields at Lakeview.
Yeah,
and
okay,
Capitol View.
okay.
We
that-
didn't get
So,
that.
yeah, so you're looking at the lights.
Okay,
and
so
stuff
if we were
that's-
looking at ball field lighting,
Mhm.
we could pull that out as a project and have a standalone project to accomplish that with ARPA funds. It couldn't go into a full bond issue for approving the park, which includes park lighting.
That's-
It would have to be a separate.
That's,
project. Yes.
that's exactly what I was looking to
Mhm.
hear you say. And I'm just throwing this out. If the Franklin County Fiscal Court wanted to fund an aquatic center, you could take some of the ARPA monies and pay for it, as long as it's not part of the $60 million bonding project.
And as long as the other monies that would be required to complete that would be in place, that it could be obligated by the end of 2024 and finished by the end of 2026. So that does put some, it sounds like a long time, but when we're talking about construction projects, sometimes.
Yes,
But if we had commitments from different places and everybody had enough to do that project and could get it designed and built in that time, yes, that could be a possible separate project.
But where
but
this
it's an
difference,
indoor aquatic facility. That's specifically what the public called for, indoor.
yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't say it, but that's what I meant to say.
Yeah,
So what you're saying, and I'm just trying to clarify, what you're saying is this, is that one, we have this application going in and nothing can be done as part of the park master plan until this application has been looked at, or
national park.
Nothing
yeah,
that
yeah.
would, nothing that would significantly alter the park, such as the facilities, building the facilities. Something like enhancing or repairing something that's already there,
Like the
It's
lights would
like
be
the
okay.
lights,
Mhm.
because that
It's
amenity is already
there.
there.
Okay.
We're improving something that's already there. That's not the same situation as a significant change of use and construction projects.
Irrigation. Charlie's asked for 100, 200, we left it out of the budget, but he says he needs irrigation at the golf course. Could that be done?
As a
Would be
separate
repairs.
project.
Mhm.
Yes.
yes, as a
That could be
separate
done.
project.
Okay, that could be done. But no new type
Right.
facility. Okay, okay.
So you can make the splash pad bigger
Like the splash pad bigger. Yeah.
or something like
So
that,
lots of times, yeah.
or you can make the pulling track better.
Yeah, you could do that. Okay,
What'd you say?
The truck pulling track,
Oh, yeah.
the motorsports arena could be improved.
Uh-huh.
okay, so that's good to know. So I think that's good clarification. Ann.
And that's what I worry about the Farmdale sewer. Is it gonna be completed in 2026 by then?
Well, the
The projects we
It won't be.
go into
one
will be
point five
maybe.
match for the
Yeah.
3.5 federal appropriation. I'm gonna make sure that the engineer, because they're supposed to have their design finished in November. And we probably won't have access to that federal appropriation before that time, but they still feel that by December 2026 is a very realistic time to make sure that can be finished.
Oh, well,
To me, the
Good.
end of that, as long as the project is being built, I think you will.
I think
I think
that
they're
at that
clearly
point, the
by
federal
that time,
government will probably
the-
allow a little bit of
Yeah, there'll be
leniency.
some
Yeah,
flexibility.
But as
on
of
that
right
part.
now, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, yeah, I know what their goal is. Their goal is to make sure
And we
you're not
can,
hoarding it.
well, we can fund a pump station or
Yeah.
something, and not the entire finished
Well,
product.
this piece that it's part of the match can definitely be done,
Oh, yeah,
in that time.
yeah.
The question is
Design
how
is that.
slow the government is though.
Yeah.
When are they gonna come back and say, okay, here's your big cardboard check, go to work? I don't know, but
I'm not
it's-
sure, because this is
Yeah.
a new round of appropriations, and if they handle it differently than they did in years past, with everything else that's going on, so
Mhm.
everybody's guess is as good as mine, how long that might take.
So, and this will have to come back to the park committee. Do you think that, we ought to move forward on the lights, as quickly as possible at the softball field? And have those upgraded so they can have more tournaments?
I mean, I would certainly lean on what Charlie would think on that. I think he's the best person to ask. I think that's something he's been asking for years. So I think that's definitely a conversation worth having.
Okay. Okay, that's a good point, interesting point. All right, anything else, anything you guys see that you want to appropriate part of this money for?
We need to vote on that 1.6, so don't
Oh, we haven't voted on that, okay.
Thought we did. I have,
we? Okay,
Motion.
yeah, okay.
yeah,
We
motion by the
motion,
judge and seconded by you, and I wrote down that all in favor.
Okay.
Okay,
yeah, I remember that one.
and we went with
You didn't
Susan's.
say I
I
moved.
remember a second, I
You know.
remember voting.
All right. Committee a little bit more relaxed on. Yeah. Anything else?
All right, so, the 1.6 will go on a future court agenda, will not go on this court agenda,
Okay.
correct? That's what-
Yes,
22nd. Is that the next
it's
one?
the second.
April 22nd, so you want it on the April 22nd agenda?
I guess. Do we not? I don't know.
I don't know, do you want to wait till we get the second round, or do you want to go ahead and?
Oh, you mean that'll be in May though, right?
I think it was May 17th,
Mhm.
about the first
Oh,
deposit.
we can
something
wait
like that.
until,
I think we ought to wait till we get the money.
So what about Susan's, the motion for?
This is just
Oh, that
reporting.
needs to be done now.
It's
Yeah.
just, this is just
She's-
reporting.
Yeah, she's gonna do an abstract, we're gonna put that on.
We're gonna put that on. Okay, okay. All right, good enough. All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Uh,
All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all thanks for the public watching. And this, once again, has been the ARPA committee. We thank everybody for being here today. We are now adjourned. Okay,
Very good.
very good.